What if I told you that the thing you call you, your thoughts, your feelings, your memories, might not be made of matter at all? What if your deepest sense of self is not inside your brain, but instead the brain itself exists inside your consciousness? For thousands of years, mystics have whispered of a truth that modern science is only beginning to glimpse: that consciousness is not a byproduct of physical reality, but the fabric from which reality itself is woven. Close your eyes for a moment. Notice the screen you are watching disappear. The room fades, your body fades, and yet you remain. There is still an awareness, like a silent, boundless ocean, in which thoughts, images, and sensations ripple. This ocean, this field of awareness, is the most intimate thing you will ever know, yet the most elusive to define. From the laboratories of quantum physics to the cryptic passages of ancient Vedic scriptures, a puzzle emerges. If everything in the universe is made of particles, waves, and energy, then what exactly is consciousness made of? In this journey, we will dive into the deep waters of that question, not merely as an intellectual puzzle, but as a personal voyage. We will wander through the corridors of ancient wisdom, listening to voices from civilizations long gone, who spoke of the mind as light, as dream, as the dance of the eternal. We will explore modern theories that see consciousness as a quantum phenomenon, arising from the very fabric of space-time, or perhaps creating space-time itself. And most importantly, we will explore what this means for you. Because if consciousness is not bound to matter, then it is not bound to death, to time, or to limitation. And that changes everything. This is not just a question for philosophers and scientists, it is the most intimate question you can ever ask. The question that has the power to unravel the illusion of separation, to awaken the truth of what you are, and to set you free. So, let us step together into the mystery. Let us ask the quantum question. Let us find out, what is consciousness really made of? Long before the word quantum existed, humanity was already wrestling with the question of consciousness. The oldest records we have, scratched into clay tablets, whispered in the smoky halls of temples, carried in the chants of wandering mystics, hint at an understanding far deeper than mere intellectual curiosity. In the Rigveda, one of humanity's oldest surviving texts, consciousness is described as the cheat, the pure, unchanging witness that underlies all existence. The sages spoke of it as the eternal seer, not something the mind produces, but the space in which the mind appears. Thousands of miles away, in ancient Egypt, priests in the temple of Luxor taught initiates that the human ka, a subtle double, was the animating principle of life, the bridge between mortal form and divine origin. In Greece, the philosopher Plato told the story of the soul as a traveler from a higher realm, momentarily trapped in the shadows of the material world. To Plato, the true self was not the body or even the personality, but something timeless, recalling its origins in a world of pure forms. His student Aristotle, however, sought to anchor the mind in the functions of the body, planting the seeds of the debate that still rages today. Is consciousness a product of biology, or biology a product of consciousness? Mystical traditions, too, had their own visions. The Kabbalists spoke of the neshama, the higher soul, as a spark of divine intelligence clothed in human form. In Sufi poetry, consciousness was the beloved itself, an ocean into which the drop of the self longs to merge. In Zen Buddhism, monks were taught to seek the mind before thought, to find the original face they had before they were born. But the truly fascinating twist comes when we look at early scientific thought. Even in the 17th century, Descartes declared, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. This was not a proof of the physical world, but of the undeniable fact of awareness. You can doubt your senses, your body, even the existence of the universe, but you cannot doubt the presence of consciousness itself. And then came the modern age. As the microscope probed cells and the telescope probed galaxies, science narrowed its lens to the measurable. Consciousness became something inconvenient, subjective, intangible, not easily fitted into equations. For centuries, it was pushed aside, reduced to a byproduct of brain chemistry, an emergent property of neurons firing in the dark. But a strange thing happened. As physicists dug deeper into the foundations of reality, they found that matter itself was not solid, that particles behave like waves until observed, that the act of measurement changes the thing measured. And in the shadows of quantum theory, the question that ancient sages once held as sacred returned with renewed force. Could consciousness itself be the foundation of all things? From the deserts of ancient Egypt to the equations of modern quantum mechanics, the question has never truly gone away. It has only changed its clothing, shifting from the robes of the mystic to the lab coat of the physicist. But the mystery remains. And so, as we stand on the threshold between the ancient and the modern, we must ask, are we discovering something new about consciousness, or remembering something we once knew and have forgotten? To begin peeling back the layers of this enigma, we must first confront an unsettling truth. Science, as we know it, has no universally accepted definition of consciousness. We can describe what it does, awareness, perception, thought, but we cannot point to a single tangible thing and say, here, this is consciousness. And perhaps that's because consciousness is not something you can dissect like a frog or bottle like a chemical. It's not in space and time in the way objects are. Rather, it might be the canvas upon which space and time themselves are painted. Imagine you're in a dream. Within that dream, there is a world. Mountains, oceans, people, even a body you call your own. But all of it is made of one thing, the dreamer's mind. Now imagine that waking life is also a dream, but on a scale so vast and convincing that you've forgotten you are the dreamer. In this analogy, consciousness is not inside the dream. It is the substance of the dream itself. Modern quantum theory has provided strange hints in this direction. One of the most puzzling phenomena in physics is the observer effect, the fact that particles seem to exist as a cloud of probabilities until they are measured, at which point they take on a definite state. Some physicists argue that this measurement could simply be an interaction with any physical system, but others, like the late John Wheeler, dared to ask whether it's consciousness itself that crystallizes reality from a sea of potential. Wheeler's provocative phrase, "it from bit," suggested that information, not matter, might be the bedrock of reality. This opens a radical possibility, that consciousness is not something that emerges from the physical world, but that the physical world emerges from consciousness. Ancient mystics would nod knowingly here. They've been saying this for millennia. In Advaita Vedanta, a school of Hindu philosophy, reality is likened to a projection on a screen. The screen is pure awareness. Everything else is the movie. But how could this be? How could something seemingly non-material give rise to the material? One emerging idea is that consciousness may be a fundamental property of the universe, like mass, charge, or spin. This is the view known as panpsychism, that consciousness, in some basic form, exists in all matter. Not that a rock thinks,
but that even the smallest particle carries a glimmer of experience, a faint primordial isness, that, when organized into complex forms like brains, blossoms into the rich inner worlds we know. Still, another theory goes further. OR, orchestrated objective reduction, proposed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, suggests that consciousness might arise from quantum processes within microtubules, tiny structures inside our brain cells. In this view, the mind is not just a computer running on neurons, but a quantum orchestra, weaving reality at the smallest scales of existence. But here's the strange part. If these quantum processes are real, they might not be confined to the brain at all. They could be happening everywhere, in everything, meaning your consciousness is not truly trapped in your skull. Your mind could be a ripple in a universal field of awareness, much like a wave is not separate from the ocean. And that ocean? That might be the answer to our question. Consciousness as the primal substance, the quantum light from which all forms arise. We're only halfway into the heart of the mystery. In the next part, we will dive deeper into paradoxes, contradictions, and the hidden implications that most discussions of consciousness avoid. If consciousness truly underlies reality, then the boundaries we take for granted between self and other, subject and object, even life and death, begin to dissolve. But this is where the mystery becomes dangerous to the mind. Because to the ego, the part of you that insists on being a separate me, this idea feels like a death sentence. And in a way, it is. Let us walk into a paradox. If the universe is like a dream, then the you who wakes up each morning is not the dreamer, but a character in the dream. The real dreamer is the deeper consciousness in which both the character and the dream itself arise. The mystics of every tradition have hinted at this. The Sufis called it dying before you die, the Buddhists call it seeing through the illusion of self, and quantum physicists, though more cautious in language, are increasingly aware that the observer may not be as localized or personal as we imagine. Now, here's a troubling question. If consciousness is not made of matter, then what happens to it when the body dies? Does it vanish, or does it return to its source, just as a wave falls back into the ocean? Some cutting-edge interpretations of quantum mechanics, particularly the many worlds and holographic universe theories, offer intriguing possibilities. The holographic model suggests that our 3D reality might be a projection from a deeper, information-rich realm. If consciousness is part of that underlying information layer, then death may be less an ending and more a shift in perspective, like closing one book and opening another. But there's a more radical implication. If consciousness is the fabric of reality, then time itself may be an illusion within consciousness rather than something consciousness travels through. This means your birth, life, and death could all be simultaneous frames in a greater whole, and your awareness is simply moving its attention from one moment to another. The trick, however, is that consciousness resists being studied as an object because it is the subject. You cannot look at it from the outside because it is what is doing the looking. This is why the ancient yogis, Sufi mystics, and Zen masters turned inward, not to escape the world, but to explore the source from which the world springs. Here is the subtle trap. If you imagine consciousness as some kind of glowing mist or field out there in the cosmos, you've missed the point. It's not out there at all. It is the immediate, undeniable presence that is hearing these words right now. The only reason it feels elusive is that it's so close you overlook it, like an eyeball trying to see itself. This is why in the Upanishads it is said, "That which cannot be seen, but by which all else is seen, know that to be the self, and not what people here adore." So, what is consciousness made of? Perhaps the more precise question is, what is everything else made of? If the answer is consciousness, then we are not isolated minds in a vast, indifferent universe. We are the universe, awake in a particular form, temporarily pretending to be separate. And if that's true, then waking up from the illusion may be the most important journey we will ever take.
If consciousness is the fundamental reality, the ocean from which all waves arise, then the most profound shift we can make is to stop identifying solely with the wave. In other words, stop thinking of yourself only as the mind, body, and personality, and start recognizing yourself as the awareness that holds them all. This is not just poetic mysticism, it is a practice, one you can begin right now. 1. The observer's seat. At any moment, pause and notice. Thoughts are happening, sensations are arising, emotions are flowing, but you are the one aware of them. You are not the anger, the fear, or even the joy. You are the space in which they appear. This is the first step toward experiencing consciousness directly, rather than thinking about it. Practical tip: set a reminder on your phone that simply says, "Who is aware right now?" When it goes off, take 10 seconds to notice the awareness behind your current experience. Over time, this loosens the grip of identification with thoughts. 2. Dissolving the subject-object divide. Pick an object in your environment, say a candle flame or a tree outside your window. Watch it with the understanding that both the perceiver and the perceived arise in the same field of awareness. At first, it may feel like you are watching it, but with practice, the line between observer and observed begins to blur. This mirrors the quantum insight that separation is an appearance, not a fundamental truth. 3. Tuning to the quantum field. If consciousness is like the operating system of reality, then deep stillness is how you access its root functions. Meditation is not about emptying the mind, but about letting surface ripples settle so you can sense the vastness beneath. Try this. Sit comfortably. Focus on the feeling of simply being, not on your thoughts, not on your breath, but on the bare fact that you exist. Each time a thought pulls you away, gently return to that sense of pure existence. Over weeks and months, you may begin to notice a subtle shift. Life feels less like something happening to you and more like something happening within you. 4. Using consciousness creatively. If reality arises within consciousness, then your intentions and attention are not passive. They are active participants in shaping your world. In practical terms, this means the thoughts you habitually entertain and the emotional states you cultivate are not just personal. They ripple outward into the field that is reality itself. You can use this deliberately. Before starting your day, choose a state to embody: peace, curiosity, courage. Hold it gently in awareness, not as a forced emotion, but as a chosen lens. Notice how events and interactions subtly rearrange themselves in resonance with that state. 5. Facing fear and mortality. Perhaps the most transformative effect of this understanding is the dissolution of the fear of death. If consciousness is not produced by the body, then its absence is not your end. It's a return to the source you never truly left. Contemplating this is not morbid, it is liberating. Spend a few quiet minutes reflecting. If I am the ocean, what does it matter if one wave subsides? This shifts the focus from clinging to the temporary to resting in the eternal. These practices are not quick tricks. They are a reorientation of your identity, a slow but steady awakening from the dream of separateness. And while the mind may demand proof, the real evidence comes not from theory, but from the transformation in how you live, love, and see the world. When practiced sincerely, you begin to realize something extraordinary. You were never in the universe. The universe has always been in you.
We began with a question that has haunted both mystics and scientists. What is consciousness really made of? Along the way, we walked through ancient temples and modern laboratories, through the silent halls of the Upanishads and the equations of quantum theory, only to arrive at a startling possibility. Perhaps consciousness is not made of anything at all. Perhaps it is the very substance from which all else is made. From the Rigveda's pure witness to Wheeler's it from bit, the threads of wisdom, old and new, seem to weave the same tapestry, that the reality we touch, taste, and measure is only the surface of a deeper ocean, and that ocean is awareness itself. If this is true, then you are far more than the passing story of your life. You are the timeless field in which that story unfolds. You are not just the wave, you are the water. And the water does not die when the wave falls. It simply returns to its still, infinite form. This understanding is not meant to be locked away as philosophy. It is an invitation to live with less fear, to love without the armor of separation, to act with the knowing that you and the universe are not two, to meditate not as an escape from life, but as a way of touching its source. So as you finish this video, I leave you with a question, not to answer with words, but to explore in the quiet space between them. When all thoughts, all sensations, and all images fade, what remains? Perhaps in that silent presence, you will find the answer you have been seeking. Or perhaps you will realize the one who was seeking has been the answer all along. Now, close your eyes, not to shut out the world, but to awaken to the one who is seeing, because that is you.